Hi, I'm August Keller, and this is my review of Challengers. So, I love this movie. It's one of my favorites of the year so far, and it should end up on my top 10 list at the end of the year. It really boils down to a love triangle, essentially, but that triangle is really dynamic, and each relationship in the triangle is expressing something. Through this triangle, it interweaves themes of competition, passion, control, and lust. They all really fit together very naturally. And the movie makes the connection between sports and sexuality very, very obvious. It's just like a hand in glove, really, all these themes. The dialogue is natural yet purposeful. It feels real, but it's always pushing something, either the plot or the themes or the drama, usually all three. It drives the tension, the power dynamics, and the conflicts. Plus, this is really interesting, is that the climax really shifts away from that, actually. It's a very conversation-based script, and then suddenly all the communication is done solely through action. There's no dialogue really in the climax. It's all just people doing things, and they're having a conversation through their choices, and that is really refreshing and extra impactful, especially because it's just such a stark shift. The characters are very important, of course, in a script like this. They all have very unique demeanors, motivations, flaws, and layers. They're all very complex characters, but they're all very different. They complement each other really well, and they highlight each other's traits through contrast. None of them are necessarily likable, some of them more than others, but they all are very fascinating. Watching their relationships unfold is very complex and thrilling in a kind of morbid kind of way at times, but even it's just kind of a dissection of relationships in a way, and they're all very heightened, so it's fun, but they're relatable too, because they're going through things that I think a lot of us have gone through. The acting elevates all of this. With physicality, there's a lot of chemistry, there's a lot of nonverbals, like I said earlier. There's a lot of charm and charisma. There's authenticity, they're very authentic. There's range and intensity and sheer presence. Like Zendaya, I know she's getting a lot of praise for this movie specifically, but rightfully so. She is just such a force in this movie. She is just magnetic. You can't take your eyes off of her. So, yeah, they all bring a lot of depth to these roles. The roles are already pretty interesting and juicy, but they all heighten them. Not just Zendaya. Zendaya's especially great, but the other two leads are also quite great. There's a lot of setup and payoff. That's very satisfying. It's a lot of there's a lot of timeline jumping in the movie, so they set up a question and then they pay it off later by either going in the past or going in the future. There's a lot of Machiavellian mind games. It's a very Machiavellian script, a lot of power and manipulation and control. There are a lot of turning points that really recontextualize things. Like, you think things are one way, and then you see why they are that way, and it really kind of shifts your view of how you perceived it. The tension is consistent. There are some arcs that are very satisfying. The ending really kind of ties it all together and makes me is one of the most satisfying conclusions emotionally that I've seen in a while. And the ending is very subversive. I know the ending might bother some people because it blatantly kind of disregards the plot and kind of goes just all in on themes and drama. And it does it to such a degree that it kind of becomes abstract, which is kind of hard for general audiences to accept. But to me, it was brilliant. I thought it was exactly the perfect ending, actually, because in a movie like this, the drama and themes should be valued, should be prioritized. And it also is just it's so subversive that it's very unexpected, very surprising. And for sports movies, that's a pretty hard thing to do. Sports movies, I like sports in general, but sports movies I've always found kind of all the same because they either win or lose. You know, it's kind of like an either or ending. And this ending kind of was more satisfying than that. I'm trying not to spoil anything, so I'll say it that way. So altogether, Challengers highlights the fierce animal in all of us, is what I wrote. It's a very primal movie in its emotions, and because it's so primal, it's very relatable and just engrossing. I found it to be tantalizing, you know? Technically, Challengers mixes personal with exaggeration. So it feels very intimate, but also very heightened at the same time. And that's a pretty tough balancing act there, because those two traits are basically contrasting. Intimacy is often depicted as understated in art, but this movie kind of flips that on its head because, you know, our intimate feelings, our personal feelings can feel very heightened to us in reality. So this movie really kind of harnesses that and is able to kind of feel intimate and feel heightened at the same time, which I found excellent, brilliant even. The imagery, I think, is one of the best examples of this. It helps marry these two contrasting styles by there's like a lot of natural lighting and subtle framing, which is understated, but then it will shift into extreme motion or POVs and angles and like dramatic focus. And it starts kind of small. It does that. It just does it like with these pops here and there. To start off, it kind of sets a baseline of understatedness and just kind of stylization here and there. And then it really ramps up to the climax. The climax is very stylized. Again, still kind of grounded by certain choices that the movie had established, like the lighting. But it's really going for these wild camera movements and interesting, like abstract angles. And I think that really helps solidify these tones of intimacy and exaggeration. The editing is very non-linear, jumping around timelines, like sometimes even flashbacks within flashbacks, which I know can be confusing. I was confused, frankly, at times. But in a movie like this, I feel like where the plot is not as important and it's really more about the drama and the themes, you just kind of have to go with it and just accept, all right, I'm confused about what exactly happened when, but it's okay because what's important is that the emotions are clear and the themes are clear. So I think it really manages that well. But yeah, on a little micro examination, there's a lot of match cuts, there are freeze frames, there's a lot of pacing shifts, split screens, slow-mo, and the momentum is just so high. Every scene is just pushing you into the next scene, and I'm just constantly wanting to know what's going to happen next. Because of that non-linear editing, it'll like leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger and jump into something else that's interesting and bring you to a cliffhanger there, and then go back to the other cliffhanger and kind of pay that off, but you're still interested in what that other cliffhanger. I don't know if I'm losing anybody here, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of momentum. The sound is very intimate. I think this is where the movie really solidifies the emotional motivation. I think the sound is always motivated by how the characters are feeling. So there's a lot of perspective There are like the volume shifts and smash cuts and a lot of emphasis to like really draw the viewer into what the characters are focusing on. Maybe it's like just a ball bouncing on the ground, but it's really, really explosive, or, you know, things like that. And that really, really just hammers home the drama of the movie. The music has a lot of rhythmic synths. So it's like very pulsing, which I know some people might feel is out of place, but I think emotionally it really fits because it's such a, like a pulsing kind of almost erotic kind of synth wave music that makes sense that it would be makes sense for a movie that's very sexual and also very competitive. You know, the pulsing driving synths, you know, are kind of very similar to the body moving in the sports and the sexual arenas. I hope I'm not getting too weird here. But in addition to that, there's some diegetics, a lot of like Y2K pop hits that set the the era. There's like this choral motif that like is peppered throughout that really conveys, that really drives home themes. And there's restraint. There's at least one scene or two where there's like no music at all, where the drama just kind of speaks for itself. I always like when movies do that, when it's well executed, which it is here. The production design conveys eras. It jumps through timelines, so the characters are supposed to be different ages and different scenes, and it conveys that. There's a lot of sports settings, like at different professional levels. There's a lot of sexuality, a lot of contrast, a lot of wealth conveyed in the production design. So the wardrobe is really showing how the characters feel, either by or showing emotion in general, either by like, showing a lot of skin, hence the sexuality, or showing how the characters align with one another. Maybe one character is dressed more similarly to another character, and then they're dressed more similarly to a different character later on, and that conveys, you know, their relationships. And then sometimes there's a T-shirt that's seen throughout the movie with literal words on it that are saying something specific, intentional, which drives home some drama and themes. The cast, I think, is great. It's a perfect fit in all three of the key roles. The fame is nice and sizable, and I think these are breakthrough performances for all three main leads. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the roles that Zendaya is remembered for. She's already had a great career, but she's going to continue to have a great career. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those movies that people bring up when they're reminiscing about her career as a whole. And also Faist, I hope I'm saying his name right, Faist, and O'Connor, both are just great fits. They're not as famous as, you know, some other people out there, but I hope that this movie helps them become more famous because they both fit the role so excellently, and I'm really pleased with that trio, and I wouldn't change a single one of them. The effects are pretty minimal. There's makeup, some ancillary CGI, but there are some stunts, some sporting kind of stunts where they're playing tennis. That's pretty important. So overall, it's not the most important part of the movie. I would say this is probably the category that's least important, but the stunts do make it fairly important, and it does that well. The tennis playing is convincing for sure. So yeah, it does what it needs to do. So overall, Challengers is a dramatic force of nature. I know the plot and the themes can be critiqued, but I think most people would have to agree that the drama is definitely there. It's pretty much pristine. I personally think the drama in this movie is a great example of what drama is in movies. I talk about the distinction between themes, plot, and drama. I think this movie while it does have plot and themes, I think this movie is a showcase of what drama can be. And it brings the themes and plots along, like I said. So, yeah, I think this movie's great, and I think it's well worth a watch, especially if you're interested in drama specifically. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about Challengers. If you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to like and subscribe. I also have an Instagram linked in the description. I have a ton of content there, much more than I do here on YouTube. I am trying to build it up on YouTube too. But yeah, I'd like support anywhere you can give support to me. But at the very least, I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you next time. Okay, thanks.